Something was wrong, terribly wrong. It was the kind of wrong that doesn't announce itself with a bang but rather seeps in quietly, like a draft under a locked door. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but the feeling was unmistakable, a gnawing unease that clung to me, refusing to let go. The world around me felt slightly askew, as if someone had tilted the room by a few degrees and I was the only one who noticed. I felt it in the marrow of my bones, a creeping chill that spread through me like a dose of something nasty. It wasn't just the cold of the room or the way the shadows seemed to stretch a little longer than usual. It was deeper, more insidious, a sense that something fundamental had shifted, and I was powerless to stop it. It centered around Amelia, my wife, my beloved Amelia, except she wasn't quite right. There was a subtle distance in her eyes, a flicker of something unplaceable that made my heart race with dread. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild, but the feeling only grew stronger with each passing day. She looked the same, of course. Same emerald eyes that could pierce your soul with a glance. Those eyes had always been my anchor, the thing I clung to when the world felt overwhelming. But now, when I looked into them, I saw something unfamiliar. A glint of calculation, perhaps, or a shadow of doubt that hadn't been there before. Same mischievous smile that could melt your heart. The smile that had drawn me in from the very beginning, that had promised warmth and laughter and a lifetime of shared secrets. Yet now, even that smile seemed different. It lingered a moment too long, or flickered at odd times as if she were trying to remember how it was supposed to go. Same cascade of auburn hair that shimmered like spun gold. But something was off. It started subtly. A hesitation in her movements, a pause before she spoke, as if she were searching for the right words in a language she'd only just learned. I told myself it was stress, or fatigue, or the changing of the seasons. But deep down I knew better. A forgotten lyric to our song. We'd played that record 100 times, singing along in perfect harmony. But now, she stumbled over the words, her voice faltering in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if the melody had changed, and only I could hear the discord. A new way she held her teacup, pinky extended in a manner that felt utterly foreign. Amelia had always cradled her cup with both hands, savoring the warmth, but now she held it delicately, almost daintily, as if she were someone else entirely. It was a small thing, but it gnawed at me, a tiny crack in the facade of our life together. There were other changes, too. The way she set the table, each fork and knife aligned with military precision, when she'd always been a little haphazard before. The way she laughed at jokes she never used to find funny, or paused to listen to music she'd once claimed to hate. Each new habit was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. A word pronounced differently, the crisp vowels suddenly muddled and strange. She'd always had a lilting musical way of speaking, but now her words sounded clipped, almost foreign. I found myself listening for these slips, cataloging them in my mind, searching for a pattern that might explain what was happening. "Amelia, darling," I asked one evening, my voice tight with a concern I couldn't quite place. "Are you feeling all right?" I tried to sound casual, but the question hung in the air between us, heavy and loaded with all the things I was too afraid to say out loud. Her smile was a touch too wide, a touch too sharp. It was the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, that seemed to be pasted on for my benefit. For a moment I wondered if she could see the fear in my own expression, if she knew how desperately I was searching for the woman I loved in the stranger sitting across from me. "Of course, love. Why ever do you ask?" Her voice was calm, reassuring, but there was something in it, a note I'd never heard before, a subtle discord that made my skin crawl. I wanted to believe her, to accept her words at face value, but the doubt lingered, growing stronger with every passing day. I realized then that sometimes the people we know best can become the greatest mysteries of all. The logical part of me, the part that clung to reason like a life raft, scoffed at my unease. I tried to anchor myself in facts, to remind myself that doubt was just a trick of the mind, a shadow cast by fatigue and overthinking. I told myself that I was being ridiculous, that my worries were nothing more than the echoes of old insecurities. Still, logic and emotion rarely walk hand in hand. Even as I recited the evidence to myself, a quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered that something was off, that I was missing a crucial detail. I tried to ignore it, but it was persistent, gnawing at the edges of my certainty. Amelia was Amelia. There was proof, irrefutable and concrete. She was the woman I had fallen in love with, the one whose smile could light up the darkest room. Her presence was as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. I could list 1,000 things about her her favorite song, the way she always left the window open a crack at night, the scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway. These were the details that made up a life together, the small certainties that should have been enough to silence any doubt. We had the DNA test from that silly ancestry kit, our genetic compatibility a testament to our bond. I remembered the day we laughed over the results, teasing each other about distant relatives and improbable heritage. The science was there in black and white, spelling out our connection in a language that left little room for ambiguity. It was supposed to be reassuring, a modern-day seal of authenticity, and yet even the cold certainty of genetics seemed to falter in the face of my growing unease. We had photo albums overflowing with shared memories, her laughter echoing from each picture. Every page was a testament to the years we'd spent together, holidays, birthdays, quiet afternoons on the couch. I could trace the arc of our relationship through those images, see the way we'd grown and changed, always side by side. The photos were more than just snapshots. They were proof of a life built together, of moments that could not be faked or forged. Still, as I flipped through them, I found myself searching for something, some sign, some clue that would explain the unease that had taken root inside me. We had inside jokes, whispered secrets, a history woven together tighter than any tapestry. There were words and glances only we understood, a shorthand built over years of shared experience. I remembered the way we'd finish each other's sentences, the comfort of her hand in mine during long walks, the warmth of her laughter in the quiet hours of the night. These were the things that should have made me feel secure, that should have drowned out any doubt. But instead, they only made the uncertainty more painful, as if the very depth of our connection made the possibility of losing it all the more terrifying. "Stop this, Benedict," I muttered to myself, staring at our reflection in the hallway mirror. I tried to see us as we were, to remind myself that the man in the glass was not a stranger, and neither was the woman beside him, but the mirror offered no comfort, only a distorted echo of my own anxiety. I wondered if Amelia could sense the shift in me, if she noticed the way I hesitated before speaking, the way my eyes lingered on her a moment too long. I wanted to believe that everything was as it should be, but the doubt refused to let go. A handsome couple we were, or at least we appeared to be. To the outside world we were the picture of happiness, well-dressed, smiling, perfectly in sync. Friends envied our relationship, strangers complimented our chemistry. But appearances are only skin deep, and beneath the surface, I felt the first cracks beginning to form. I wondered how much of what we showed the world was real, and how much was simply habit, a performance we'd perfected over time. Yet, the doubt lingered, a persistent itch beneath my skin. It was a quiet, insistent presence, impossible to ignore. No matter how much evidence I gathered, no matter how many times I told myself that everything was fine, the uncertainty remained. It colored every thought, every memory, every moment I spent with Amelia. I didn't know where it had come from, or what it meant, but I knew one thing for certain. Until I found the truth, I would never be able to rest. The changes were insidious, gradual. They crept in quietly, like the shifting of sand dunes in the night, imperceptible at first but relentless in their persistence. At the beginning it was easy to dismiss the oddities as quirks of memory, the sort of thing that happens to everyone from time to time. A forgotten name here, a misplaced object there. But as the days passed, the subtle differences began to accumulate, weaving themselves into the fabric of daily life. Like a painter subtly altering a masterpiece, stroke by stroke, until the original was lost beneath the new facade. Each change was so slight, so delicately rendered, that it was almost impossible to pinpoint the moment when the familiar became strange. The brushstrokes of transformation were invisible, yet their effect was profound. It was as if someone was quietly rewriting the story of a life, one detail at a time, until the narrative no longer matched the memories. Amelia, who used to devour mystery novels, now only read biographies. The shelves that once overflowed with tales of intrigue and suspense were now lined with the lives of real people, their stories meticulously chronicled. The thrill of the unknown had been replaced by the certainty of facts, and the excitement that once lit up her eyes as she turned the pages of a whodunit was now reserved for the quiet revelations of history. Amelia, who couldn't cook to save her life, now whipped up gourmet meals with effortless grace. The kitchen, once a place of frustration and burnt toast, had become her sanctuary. She moved with a confidence that seemed foreign, her hands deftly slicing, stirring and plating dishes that would have impressed any chef. The aroma of spices and fresh herbs filled the air, a testament to skills she had never possessed before. Amelia, who used to hate the opera, now hummed Verdi arias in the shower. The music, once grating and incomprehensible to her, now seemed to flow naturally from her lips. She would catch herself singing melodies she had never learned, the notes lingering in the steam as if they belonged to someone else. Even her taste in music had shifted, her playlists now filled with soaring sopranos and dramatic overtures. Each discrepancy on its own seemed insignificant. A new mug in the cupboard, a photograph slightly out of place, a note written in handwriting that looked almost but not quite like her own. These were the sorts of things that could be explained away, attributed to forgetfulness or a momentary lapse in attention. But the frequency of these small changes grew, and with them, a sense of unease began to settle in. But together they formed a disquieting mosaic, a portrait of a woman who was both familiar and utterly alien. The sum of these changes was more than the parts, a growing sense that the person she had always known, the person she had always been, was slipping away, replaced by someone new. And as the evidence mounted, it became impossible to ignore the truth. Memory, like sand, can shift beneath your feet, leaving you standing in a landscape you no longer recognize. My obsession grew, a dark cloud consuming my every thought. I spent hours scrutinizing old videos, listening for inflections in her voice, analyzing her every move. Friends noticed my distraction, my growing paranoia. "It's just stress, mate," they'd say, clapping me on the back with a forced cheerfulness that did little to ease my fears. But I knew better. This wasn't stress. This was something far more sinister, a truth too terrible to comprehend. I loved Amelia, I truly did. But love, I was discovering, was a fragile thing. It could be eroded by doubt, chipped away by suspicion until only a hollow shell remained. I found myself flinching at her touch, my stomach churning at her kisses. The fear, once a distant murmur, now roared in my ears, drowning out the whispers of love and trust. Driven to the brink, I sought answers in the cold, sterile labs of science. I had Amelia's DNA retested, convinced there must be some error, some anomaly that would explain the chasm that had opened between us. The results came back, a perfect match, my Amelia, my wife. But as I stared at the clinical report, a terrifying thought wormed its way into my mind. What if the science itself was flawed? What if there were forces at play beyond our comprehension, forces capable of manipulating the very fabric of reality? The world around me seemed to warp and distort, my once familiar life taking on the nightmarish quality of a surrealist painting. Sleep offered no escape, only a descent into a vortex of paranoia and dread. In my dreams, Amelia's face morphed and shifted, her eyes glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. I was losing my grip, teetering on the precipice of madness. One morning, I woke to find Amelia watching me, her expression an unsettling blend of amusement and pity. "You're being ridiculous, darling," she said softly, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "It's me, your Amelia." And for a fleeting moment, I believed her. The doubt receded, the fear abated, and I was left with the aching familiarity of her presence. But as I met her gaze in the mirror, a chilling thought struck me. It wasn't just her that had changed, it was me too. The lines had blurred, the boundaries of my reality irrevocably shattered. Was she truly an imposter, a doppelganger wearing my wife's skin, or had I simply gone mad, my mind constructing a delusion too terrifying to ignore? There were no easy answers, no satisfying conclusions, only the chilling certainty that something was deeply, irrevocably wrong. And the haunting question that would forever linger in the shadows of my mind: who, or what, was I sharing my life with?